I'd like to actually open with a prayer, a poem prayer, some stanzas from a poem written by Mirabai Starr to Shekinah. The Shekinah is the Hebrew word for the embodiment of God or the indwelling God in this world. But because Hebrew is a gendered language, it's feminine. So I'd like to open with some stanzas of a prayer poem that she wrote. O Shekinah, yours is the feminine face of the holy, the luminous moon who lights up the night as we travel from captivity to liberation, the pillar of fire who guides our way home, the cloud hovering over the mountain peaks, living sign that the drought is over. You are the indwelling presence of the divine. Whenever we gather to praise the one, you are here in our midst. When we cry out for justice, you make our hearts tender. When we stand with those on the margins, you make our legs strong. When we create works of art and parent our children and harvest our gardens, you guide and sustain us. O Shekinah, we are the vessel of your inflowing. Your radiance requires the clay of our embodiment. Be with us now as we navigate this landscape of mystery where your most cherished attributes, wild mercy and boundless compassion, righteousness and wisdom seem to be cast aside and trampled by imperious world powers, and we are paralyzed by helplessness. Help us. May we remember you and lift you up. May we recognize your face and celebrate your beauty in everything and everyone, everywhere, always. Amen. I'm going to need a tissue. If someone could get me a tissue, that would be great. So, Mothers of Compassion, what does that mean? This is the season of honoring birth and rebirth in a time of darkness. And it does sort of feel like we're in a time of darkness, doesn't it? It's a time to welcome coming light, to honor the renewal of life, even in moments when all seems lost. It's a time of year where the holidays proclaim hope is reborn, and we must honor the mother in all of us. So I ask myself, this mother, this idea of mothering, this idea of gestation, why is it a side event, all these seasonal stories? We don't hear about it. I mean, I believe now more than ever, we really need to dive deep into what it means to not simply give birth to hope. Oh, yay. Hope, alive and practical. But what it means to conceive, what it means to gestate, what it means to nurture, what it means to have that spark of life that we know is holy growing within our hearts, within ourselves. What does it mean to celebrate the womb of healing and creation of the coming light? What does that mean? Birth, whole birth, live embodied birth. That's what we are here right now. Whether you believe in birth again and again and again, or this is your one holy precious life. This seed of possibilities has always been likened to hope. Each new being born, regardless of gender, ethnicity, or species, is a reminder of this. Labor is dangerous, risky, painful, and yet hope carries us through. Thomas Merton writes, I used to have this quote on my refrigerator for a long time, perfect hope arrives on the brink of despair. Perfect hope arrives on the brink of despair. Instead of falling over the edge, we find ourselves walking on air. That is what it means to be a mother of compassion, to see despair and give birth to hope. Some say compassion comes from the word compati, which is usually translated to suffering with the suffering of others. So compassion means to suffer with the suffering of others. That's one idea. Etymologists get to fight over these kind of things. Another idea is to say that it comes from cum passus, which means the coming together of two ideas, cum, together, passus, and passion. I have the passion to feel your feelings. I have your feelings with you, cum passion. Your passions are your feelings, my passions are my feelings. Together I feel your feelings. It's important to note that neither of these have anything to do with pity or sympathy. The Hebrew word for mercy and compassion is rahamim, but it's also interesting. Rahamim also means womb. So the same word for mercy, the same word for compassion, is also the same word for womb. I do a contemplative practice called centering prayer. Have I spoken to you about that? Probably need to do a lesson on that. It's an amazing practice. You take a word, it can be any word. You could use the word carrot. You could use the word poinsettia, which is a little long. Any word that calls you back in this practice over and over again to the indwelling spirit of God, or the indwelling spirit of the divine, or to your highest self, however you want to frame this. And the word that I've been playing with is rachamim. That's the word that I've been using for the past month. And it's been working through me in this beautiful way because it's connecting me back to this idea of mercy, compassion, and the womb. That we're all sort of in a womb, and we all, no matter how you gender identify, have the cave of your heart. You have the womb of creation within you. Allowing the quick flood of emotions. In ancient times, and still all over the Northern Hemisphere today, people celebrate solstice as the birth and rebirth of the sun, or the sun, or the sun. Right? Yeah. This goes on. You can find, wherever you are in the Northern Hemisphere, this happens now. In the Southern Hemisphere, they are about to say goodbye. Christians in the season, we celebrate birth, but not pregnancy, not gestating, not the birthing of Jesus. Why? Why not? Why are we not overwhelmed with images of pregnant women during these winter holy days? I mean, seriously, why are not we surrounded by pregnant Marys during Advent? You think about it, it would make the most practical sense than on December 1st, suddenly all the statues appear. Why don't they? Why don't they? Neo-pagan pageants of my UU youth were filled with reenactments of the Oak King and the Holly King, fighting it out for who was going to win, and then the sun gets, as the wheel of the earth rotated. And Christmas pageants in my Sunday school and my day school, Mary was always the blonde girl who had the longest blonde hair, and she never wore a pillow. Just saying, I mean, times have changed, but have they changed that much? And then, of course, we have Santa. My mom loves Santa. She collected them, and every year I unpack them and place them all around my house. Images of a story that meant Santa could be anyone. And that was my childhood story, that Santa could be anyone, and that's a story for another time, which I would love to tell you. But I knew that anybody could be Santa. So we had little images of Santa. We had Asian Santas and black Santas. We had tall Santas and skinny Santas and fat Santas. We had cat Santas and dog Santas. But no female Santas. Not even Mrs. Claus. I mean, what about her anyway, right? It seems she appeared in 1851 as the all-around cookie baker, elf tender, and perhaps secretary. As seen as Lil Travels Santa Claus Land and Other Stories, which was published in 1878, quote, "There was a lady sitting by a golden desk writing in a large book, and Santa Claus was looking through a great telescope. And every once in a while he would stop and press his ear to a large speaking tube. Presently, he said to the lady, 'Put down a good mark for Sarah Buttermilk. I see she is trying to conquer her quick temper.'" Oh yes, our tempers. Our tempers. Our tempers are absolutely some idea of what it means not to be appropriately feminine. And yet that is not true. That is not accurate. The divine feminine is apparently never quick to anger, except she is. Too often we equate compassion with passivity, especially in female compassion. But when we pay attention, compassion is anything but passive. It is active, actively listening with deep empathy and righteous anger at injustice and needless suffering. It means, however, that we don't necessarily have to act with violence on those impulses of anger. And that's where we get confused. We have this idea that somehow violence and anger go hand in hand. The natural impulse of anger is arising at this moment. It gives us information to perhaps be more compassionate. In this embodied world, with this embodied brain, we are not going to not be angry. What we get angry at and how we get angry is different. My anger does not twinge the way it used to when I was a teenager. And yet I can feel that spark come up because it can lead me to what is my next compassionate step. Is it righteous? Was it egoic? Did it have a purpose? Was it because my ego got wounded? Or does it tell me that this is something I need to do to help save this world now? Carol Wilde writes in Ellen of the Ways. Ellen, E-L-E-N, is actually the name they've given to the oldest of the Neolithic goddesses. She had horns, great antlers, and she was also referred to as the dear god or the dear goddess. Quote, "It is well known that the Father Christmas story is based on an older non-Christian shamans of Lapland." And maybe some of you have heard this, that Santa Claus comes out of the shamans of Lapland. The story goes on that to aid their shamanic flights in trance, shamans needed the properties of fly agaric mushroom. You know the fly agaric mushroom? It's the classic mushroom that you see in all the fairy tales. It's bright red with little white dots all over it. It's the ones that they make out of marzipan that you can eat because you can't eat this one because it is deadly. But you know, taking mushrooms, of course, can be risky. Any mushrooms. I have a friend who is a shroomer that they go out and they say, well, you know, anything is edible once. So you do have to be sort of paying attention. Well, the shamans paid attention to the reindeer. What the reindeer would do is they would use their hoofs to clear off these mushrooms, and they would eat the mushrooms. The reindeers would actually have a lovely time eating the mushrooms, and this is where it gets really weird. They noted that as the reindeer ate mushrooms, they grew around the silver birch trees. They suffered no ill effects. The shaman let the substances pass through the reindeer, neutralizing the toxins, and then drinking the urine. The active ingredients of flight were unaffected, but the poisons were removed. How did they figure that out? These are things that make you go, huh, perhaps I'm not going to do that, but As the shaman enters his trance and begins his flight, above the snow, he can see the herds. He can see the predators of the herds. He gains helpful knowledge for the tribe. He gains wisdom of the plants and healing as the fly agaric opens gateways and pathways to him to be able to commune with the spirits of the land, the spirits of the beasts, and the ancestors. He carries these as gifts back to his world with also news of the herds, and apparently very, very accurate news of where the reindeer herds are. When finishing his trance, the shaman would enter the yurt back through the smoke hole and slide down the silver birch pole with his bag of healing plants and paraphernalia. Father Christmas coming down the chimney. And I know that some of you nodded. Many of you knew already the story that sort of like Father Christmas and the shamans of the Siberian were part one and the same. But what you might not have known is that the shamans of old were all women. They were women dressed in red with white fur. So how and why was the gender changed of the driver of the sleigh? When I was a girl, I was told I was Deer Clan. I did not want to be Deer Clan. I wanted to be Wolf Clan. I was very disappointed. I asked them to check again. Nope. Ricky looked at me. Nope. You're Deer Clan, Lizzie. I stomped my feet. Really, deer, passive little pretty animals. Weak, meek, food. No thank you. And I put that piece of ancestral gift into a box of irrelevant traditions from dead people. We all carry those traditions from dead people. Some of them we want to do, some of them, like some fruitcakes recipes, we don't need to make again. Yeah. So I put that at the same time. I was also around the same time I was adopted, and I got a new last name. My new last name was Rudolph. Yeah, the famous reindeer. You haven't lived until you've had your entire high school class break into the newly translated version of Rudolph Rubrum Narabisque Sirvi. Yeah, they translated the whole song. It followed me all December. Now, I loved my new dad, and I really secretly wanted to belong to all of the games that those new reindeers were playing. And in truth, all my life I've had stags coming to me in my dreams. But I really never paid any attention to this kind of mythology for me or for what it might mean to my world until this winter. And this winter, I ran smack in the stories of Deer Woman. How did I not know these stories? I read an awful lot. I was surrounded by deer all year. Live, actual deer in my travels, not just in upstate New York, but in Switzerland, where they have these beautiful red deer. Whether you look at it through the lens of sacred story, or Jung, or mysticism, or paganism, or good old-fashioned, well-reasoned Unitarian Universalism, something was up. And so I had to start diving into some more serious research, which started leading me to, why don't we have statues of pregnant Mary? Female reindeer do not lose their antlers in the winter. Therefore, stronger than their male and larger than any of their male counterparts, and they're more agile. Ancient stories are filled with deer women and deer goddesses. They share a personification with the divine, with the queen bee, and some will tell you that the first times that we embodied vision, the divine on this planet, it was a bee all through the Mediterranean eras, and it was a deer north and up. So those are the two key embodiments that we saw to say, aha, what does it mean? What is God's action here? It was a goddess with horns. It was a deer, the deer itself. It was a bee. Deer woman carries the world in her body, the sun in her antlers, but the antlers are also seen as trees of life, with her body being the earth, as all life come out of her earthly womb when the waters broke. And these antlers are also then seen, she would take the antlers and she would bury them into the earth, and they would become the roots where you would travel down into the sacred underworld. The stories are beautiful and deep. Over time, deer goddess seems to have merged with various cow goddesses as we became more agrarian, until we lost the cow and the deer entirely, and her calf became another golden symbol for another sermon. So why don't we have oodles of images of pregnant Marys? I mean, why is Rudolph not Rudolphina? Why is not a greater outcry this season of sleighs that in the past decade, over 80,000 reindeer have lost their lives to global warming? 80,000 reindeer in 10 years. The permafrost is in danger. In this winter dream time, it is time to wake up to the dreams of our sacred nurturing herstory. We need to reclaim our stories and the world. I mean, some will tell you about the three wise men had been women, they would have brought something more useful than frankincense, myrrh, and gold. A casserole, my grandmother always said, a casserole, diapers, and beer. Well, because beer helps you let down your milk. But amid the humor is the unvarnished truth. The job of the sacred feminine is to nurture with practical assistance. Thank you. To be actual compassion in action. Compassion is brave. And perhaps the bravest of acts we know, think about it, the bravest acts you can think of are all acts of compassion. Every single one. Sully standing on that airplane in the Hudson, act of compassion. Running into a building to save anybody, act of compassion. Putting yourself in front of somebody who might take a bullet, like a teacher at Sandy Hook, act of compassion. In Wild Mercy, Living the fierce and tender wisdom of the women mystics, Mirabai Starr writes of an experience she had at Chartres Cathedral in France. As she was walking over the cathedral grounds in the rain, it's pouring, she was overcome with thinking about the distance that had developed between her and her stepdaughter. They had been very close, but they were no longer close. But she was trying to be very mindful not to step over boundaries, create, So she had been holding her love and her attention back for years. And while she was walking, she was called to think upon this. And a clear voice told her to stop. Just stop it. Sometimes mothers get to talk to us like that. Just stop that. I realized, she says, I didn't need to wait for Kali, that's her stepdaughter's name, approval of my plan, which was to love and listen to her. Nor did I require that she reciprocate my dedication to her. I could simply unlock the gates and get on with loving her as my daughter. I love that idea. I think we have been conditioned to wait for permission to love. We've been conditioned to wait to feel compassionate for somebody else. We have to give ourselves permission to unlock those gates. It doesn't matter whether or not those others on the other side of those gates know they're open. Your love can flow out of them anyway. And that is what I believe that we're called to do by the sacred feminine. We're called to be mothers of compassion. Not an epiphany to be shouted from rooftops or Instagrams or walk around with a placard, but to be gently and consciously acted on, no matter what or how we identify. We are called to open our own mother hearts. Mothering and the actions of caring for all life as family are what has been lost and what we have removed from the Sacred Mother from our faith and our holy days. That key element of nurturing and caring has been devalued. That is the cost of removing the mother from sacred holy days, removing it from our life in these seasons when we celebrate. We celebrate the child, but not the mother, even as we just have snap benefits. How is that possible? It's possible because we've removed the sacred feminine from our world. The very incarnate aspect of this holy sacred feminine, I got to tell you, I hated that term. Sacred feminine, I can remember when I was first in seminary going, oh right, too new agey. Sacred feminine, it's all pastel. It's all la la la. It is not. It took me a while to sort of delve in deep, and it was through all these deer, quite frankly, because they're fierce. Oh, female deer are fierce. When they don't want somebody in their territory, oh my heavens, don't get in their way. The sacred feminine is messy. It is the ugly cry. In snot and all. It's the tender kiss. And it's the brave guardian. Mirabai Starr puts it perfectly for me, quote, like the great mother herself, the feminine mystic does not view creation as a damaged object in need of repair, but rather as a beloved child in need of care. Let that sit with you. What if we don't look at the earth as a damaged object in need of repair? What if we don't look at those children as damaged objects in need of repair that are down in Homestead? What if we look at them as beloved children in need of care? How does that change how we act in this world? Activism, effective activism, she writes, arises from unconditional love. And so even though I'm currently surrounded by tiny male Santas, and I don't want to get rid of them. But I think I'm going to start adding some woman Santas, even if I have to make them myself. I'm probably going to start adding some non-binary ones too. And maybe this season you'll place a Prager Mary's and Santa sleigh on your lawn and have her standing barely proud. I plan on making one for next season. Fair warning, David. Later this spring we can weave baskets like Miriam to save our baby brothers in as their mothers, and as their mothers we can become wet nurses, nurturing our children with secret identities in plain sight. We know and knowing that all babies are holy, as are all beings, as is this world. I ask you to be Mary's. I ask you, will you carry this baby called hope? They will be the light the world needs right now. Will you do that? Yes. Will you carry sacred truths of unconditional love in the darkness? Yes. Will you persist in the face of hate, loving those who hate you? Yes. Compassion is brave. This is what it means to be a mother of compassion. It means to be willing to sacrifice your own ego, status, personal well-being for the greater good, at the same time taking care of your embodied self, because we cannot do this work if we allow ourselves to be overcome physically. It means holding that balance, as they say, nap when the baby naps. And if you find that you really cannot connect with the mother image, try anyway. And if you really can't, be a midwife. We must bring the fierce, brave, sacred feminine back into this season in every aspect, because we must have it back in our world. We need to nurture compassion in all things. All things. We need to conceive, carry, and give birth to love again and again and again. And so it is. Every single season, every single dawn, in this moment now. Thank you.